protect all protesters against many forms of repression, ranging from criminal charges to administrative processes. We're gathered here today as faculty, as students, and as community members to call for all disciplinary actions from CCD, MSU Denver, and CU Denver to be pulled back from students. We want an end to all disciplinary proceedings. We want to make it very clear that we have seen a pattern of the administration perpetuating falsehoods about these student protesters. For example, we heard claims that students had zip-tied the doors of the Tivoli shut, and then shortly after learned that that was actually Auraria police that had decided to shut the doors in that fashion. We also want to affirm that a sit-in and chanting are not violent. A tent is not violence. And that protest is an important form of pedagogy. It is how we ensure that students learn that their world is not unchangeable, that in fact they have a role and a responsibility to be engaged in creating the world that they wish to see. We have a really wonderful list of speakers, and so I want to go ahead and jump straight into introducing our first speaker, an MSU grad, recent grad, Saoirse Ocean Ginny Maloney.
Just 1 second, y'all.
You got any control over those bells?
And I wish we did. I wish we did. I just need 1 moment to pull up my speech, and I'll be right with you.
The bells, honey, and they're ringing.
Do they normally ring like that constantly?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, okay.
Hello. All right, y'all. Hello, my name is Saoirse Ocean Ginny Maloney, and I'm an MSU Denver student and graduate in the history field with a licensure in secondary social studies. I'm here to talk on behalf of SDS, which I am also a member of. SDS stands for Students for a Democratic Society. I'm here to call upon the administration to drop the disciplinary charges against my classmates and fellow students at all 3 institutions, including CU Denver, MSU Denver, and Community College of Denver. They're inappropriate and often false. To reinforce what Z has said earlier, we've already had false allegations that go against our students and are building up cases. Our university presidents have been sending emails that likely prosecutors will happily and gleefully use in criminal cases. Disciplinary charges that have been filed by the university and actions are often occurring before students have access to legal counsel, potentially putting them in situations that jeopardize their Fifth Amendment right. We need to see these charges dropped. We need to see that our students' right to free expression is protected, and that our presidents don't say lies on us, that we're not violent protesters. We've been completely nonviolent. Tents are not violent, sit-ins are not violent. What is violent is how Auraria police has treated us. And I want to remember that from one of our fellow students who was told to stand up when she was in a wheelchair repeatedly and had her legs dangling for many seconds, to other students who've had knees in their backs. The brutality of the Auraria police reflects badly upon the institutions, and I think one way of making a right relationship back with the students and earning the trust of my fellow classmates is dropping these charges. Thank you so much for your time.
Can you spell
Say and spell.
Yes, my name is Saoirse, spelled S-A-O-I-R-S-E. My last name, Maloney, M-A-L-O-N-E-Y.
Sorry, you said you were a student and a graduate?
Yeah, I'm a student and I just graduated this spring.
Woo!
Thank you, Saoirse. And I think it's important to also note that our administrations are pushing students through disciplinary processes that lack a lot of the due process that rights they will be guaranteed in their criminal proceedings. That students are being asked to go into hearings without understanding what is going to happen. They're not allowed to have an advocate or a representative speak for them. They can have a silent advocate present with them. That students are not being provided the evidence that's going to be used against them. And that students are being accused of participating in events that some of them were not even at that time. So there's a lot of concerns and discrepancies and issues that could both compromise their standing in these institutions and their criminal cases as they move forward for folks that did experience an arrest. Next, I want to invite up an instructor in economics, Dr. Kyle Montano from the University of Colorado, Denver.
Hi everyone. I'm here to tell a little story about the time that I was arrested here on the Tivoli Quad, and more importantly about what I saw from the students at that time. This was a typical Friday for me, except for my news feeds were filled with student protests across the campus or across the country being violently confronted by police. And when I came up on campus, I had to swipe my ID card to get in. That was a change in policy in response to our protest that had arisen overnight. This is the first that I heard about it. So in a very real sense, the administrative policies announced this and alerted me to this, and I decided to come and show my support for the students who are out here standing up for what they believe in. When I got here, I came and asked the student, the first one I came up to, and said, "Hey, how are things going? Have you had any pushback from the administration, from police?" And he said, "No, not yet," but points over my shoulder, "We're about to," right as the convoy of cop cars start rolling up onto campus. Right then, the students start mobilizing. They say, "All right, we prepared for this. Let's do as we practice." I didn't know it was practice. I didn't know it was prepared for, but I did see the cops in riot gear fingering their batons and paintball guns full of pepper spray, lining up against them. I knew which side I wanted to be on, and I linked arms with my students on our quad. And I got to see what was prepared for. I saw water bottles being passed out so none of the students would be dehydrated. I saw umbrellas unfurled in case pepper spray was going to start flying. I saw the students preparing to peacefully engage with the cops in any way that they were going to come at them. And I saw the organizers come by and ask every single one of them, "Do you have the legal number? Do you have the legal number?" I did not have the legal number, but I was about to find out what it was. A little while later, we're all being arrested one by one, taken onto the prison bus, and every single person that got onto that prison bus, the students around them asked, "Do you know the legal number?" For those like me who did not, the entire bus started to sing 303 570 9362 9362 every single time to ensure that we all had the information we needed. It felt like a summer camp, plus the benefit and valuable information to keep us all safe. These are the students that the administration is thinking of punishing with suspension. The next day, I arrived back onto the encampment to see if I could do anything to support them. I was prepared to buy some pizza, some hot food on a cold, rainy, miserable night that they just all went through. I didn't need to. I was greeted with a warm beverage. I saw the tents, the encampment, and the kitchens have hot food sharing around for everyone around there. The students were demonstrating care and compassion that I rarely see around us today, as they were demonstrating the tragedy they saw on the other side of the world. They were demonstrating some of the best values of mankind. And these are the students that the administrations are thinking of punishing in order to try to deter future protests. I think we should have conversations about what is the appropriate level of disruption that should be tolerated on campuses. That is something we should all be part of. I know I'm going to have in my classes discussions about that. What is right, what is appropriate, what should be allowed and tolerated. This is something that I feel it would be a shame if students weren't all able to take part of because they were suspended, because their graduations and their careers were put on hold because they stood up for what they felt to be right. And this is not the only discussion we should be having. Even if the powers that be in the administration decide that some students cross some arbitrary threshold into too disruptive, I think that we should be talking about whether or not punishment is the right option. They're trying to deter future protests. I don't think that'll work. We saw what happened after the police disproportionately responded to the encampment out here. It doubled in size the next day. I would expect something very similar if the administration engaged in those actions again. This is the chance for the administration to work with the students to try to achieve a better outcome rather than working against them in a punishment and punitive way. I am here to say on behalf of faculty, those who are gathered today and those who could not make it, two main things. One, to the students, we see you, we hear you, and we're here for you. And two, to the administration across our shared campus who are considering punitive actions against student protesters. We see you too, and we're closely watching what you choose to do here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that it's an important point that the administrations are currently trying to deter protest, because actually the policy that was enforced here was an anti-protest policy. I once was a student at MSU Denver, and at the height of the Iraq War, we had an encampment at the Tivoli Quad, or actually at the old quad, which was up further into campus, where we camped for 3 weeks calling for an end to the Iraq War. And as a result, the administration passed the policy that you could not have a tent on campus. And that's what was used to enforce against these students. So we have to remember, every time we see repression against protesters, it creates more repression. It makes it harder and harder for people to engage in trying to make the world a better place. I'm really excited to introduce up next Chloe East from the UCD Faculty Union. Correct? Come on up.
Hello everyone, my name is Chloe East and I am an associate professor of economics here at CU Denver and a member of the United Campus Workers Union. I'm speaking today to urge CU Denver, MSU, and CCD to drop all disciplinary charges against our students and to urge that the city of Denver make the right decision and drop all legal charges against the students, faculty, staff, and community members. As Z just said, setting up tents and staging non-violent sit-ins is not a reason to punish our students. In fact, the anti-tent policy on this campus is actually an anti-protest policy that was enacted in the 2000s in response to the Iraq War protests. I am so proud of the students for all that they have accomplished on this campus in the last month. I spent time almost every day at the encampment during the 3 weeks that it was up. I helped students organize donations. I helped students feed anybody who showed up who was hungry. I helped them make phone calls to administration to ask them to consider the demands of the students. And I led a teach-in about what economics research has to say, including my own research, about the long-term consequences of war crimes like starvation on children. Students studied for finals. Families came out to the encampment with their young children and their young children stayed and played in the child area that the students had set up. People did yoga and learned how to do embroidery. The students made sure that the encampment was accessible for people with disabilities. The encampment was the most inclusive space I've ever been in the 8 years that I've worked here. Any and everyone was welcome. This includes people of all religions, Muslim people, Jewish people, Christian people, among others. I saw members of the camp talk peacefully and respectfully with people who came by who did not agree with the students. Any talk of the camp being unsafe or unclean is a lie and was told by somebody who never set foot on the camp. I was at the encampment on April 26th when over 40 protesters were arrested. I will never forget this scene and the violence this campus enacted on its students. Over 100 riot police arrived with buses ready to take people to jail. The protesters complied with the request to take down and remove the tents. About 40 protesters remained seated on the grass. I watched over a period of several hours as the police violently ripped protesters from the ground one by one and arrested them. Let me be absolutely clear here. At this point, the police were arresting people for sitting peacefully on a campus quad that is also a public space. This is the quad of the schools that the students pay to attend. This is the quad of schools where the arrested faculty and staff work. This is the quad of 3 public schools and a public space that community members all help pay for. A few days later, the students decided to march through the Tivoli in response to the administration lying to them. About 20 students walked through I saw police keeping people from entering and exiting the building using zip ties and handcuffs around the doors. MSU President Janine Davidson then lied about this and said it was the students who locked the doors. The students then staged several nonviolent sit-ins in campus buildings over the next few days, which resulted in further violent police arrests. This included mistreatment of trans people and people with disabilities, including dragging somebody who is partially paralyzed along the ground. It was the mistake of the Auraria Higher Education Center, supported by CU Denver, MSU Denver, and CCD, to repeatedly call the police on these nonviolent protesters. The Denver police chief himself implied that the arrests that took place on April 26th were not legal, when he said that there was no legal way to arrest anyone for the exact same behavior in the 2.5 weeks that followed April 26th. It is also a mistake for CU Denver to weaponize the student code of conduct against the students who are engaging in nonviolent protests. This response to our students asking for peace and justice and equality is wrong and shameful. It also goes against everything that CU Denver says that it stands for. I do not stand alone in urging the CU Denver administration, along with MSU, CCD, and AHEC, and the City of Denver, in urging them to do the right thing and drop both disciplinary and legal charges against our students. Almost 100 other professors at CU Denver have signed a letter urging the administrations to do the same, and over 250 members of the CU community have also signed a letter urging the administrations to do the same. I hope these administrations will make the right decision. Thank you.
Well, you can say spell your first name.
Yeah, first name is Chloe, C-H-L-O-E. Last name is East, like the direction, E-A-S-T. Thank you.
Do you want me to say mine? Mine was Kyle, K-Y-L-E, Montanio, M-O-N-T-A-N-I-O.
Thanks.
Next, I want to invite up an MSU faculty member who's actually going to be reading a statement from a CCD faculty member, someone who's taught at all three institutions but was not able to be here today. So I want to introduce you all to Alex Drew.
Am I too tall for this? No? Okay. So yes, I'm reading a statement for Terry Burnstead. Terry, T-E-R-R-Y, Burnstead, B-U-R-N-S-E-D. Terry has taught in all three of the Auraria campus schools and is currently teaching at the Community College of Denver. So as a member of this campus community, and more importantly, of the community members who supported the Auraria encampment, I want to join my voice to all who demand that the Denver authorities drop all charges and sanctions. The authorities of the Auraria campus and its constituent schools withdraw all sanctions and penalties, academic, financial, and otherwise, facing all students, faculty, staff, neighbors, and relatives for establishing, maintaining, visiting, and/or supporting the encampment. The encampment's denizens and supporters exemplify the finest traditions of learning, critical thought, and action in face of human emergencies stemming from the genocide in historic Palestine, and genocide funded by our tax dollars and given political cover by our own government. They reminded the larger community that higher learning is not immune from the world's struggles. They shone a light on one of the most central contests for justice in that world today. They gave visible comfort and solace to the peoples of Palestine, and both those peoples and their oppressors took notice. By contrast, the powers that be in Denver, the Auraria Higher Education Center, Metropolitan State University of Denver, the University of Colorado Denver, and Community College of Denver have all disgraced themselves, their educational missions, and the larger community by siding with murderers, torturers, colonizers, and the droppers of white phosphorus on children, the starvers of families. These forces of reaction can begin to redeem themselves by rereading their own damned Pledge of Allegiance, dropping the charges on those who they arrested, and punished for standing for justice. So that's Terry Burnstead from the CCD.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Liz Goodnick from the MSU Faculty Senate.
Hi everyone, my name is Liz Goodnick. I'm a professor of philosophy at MSU Denver, president of the Faculty Senate, and a member of the Metropolitan State Faculty Federation. Late last week, a number of MSU Denver students informed some faculty members that they are being charged with conduct violations and could be facing university disciplinary procedures. I'm extremely concerned by this development, which may penalize the very same students who thoughtfully and bravely fought to reach an amicable resolution to the encampment and discussions with the administration. Some are also facing criminal charges due to the deployment of police on campus, which is an extremely severe punishment in itself. Institutional penalties are unnecessary, especially given how hard our students worked to ensure that the protests remained peaceful and did not lead to significant property damage. I hope that, especially given the disassembly of the encampment, any plans for disciplinary procedures will be dropped. In meetings and conversations and emails and all kinds of communication with faculty, disciplinary actions against students have been an extremely emotionally charged issue. Throughout most of the period of protest, the MSU Denver administration showed admirable restraint in not penalizing students or faculty for participating in peaceful protest, in sharp contrast to many other universities across the United States. In so doing, it built a reservoir of goodwill with faculty, staff, students, and the community. We hope that this goodwill will not be lost at the last minute and that the charges against students will be dropped. Thank you. Yeah, it's Liz, L-I-Z, Goodnick, Goodnick.
For our final speaker, and then we'll open it up for questions, I want to invite another student who is actually facing disciplinary consequences, Asa Willett.
Hello, my name is Asa. I'm a student at MSU Denver. I'm currently pursuing a degree in biochemistry. I'm also a third-generation anti-Zionist Jew, and I have been banned from every building on this campus. When I received notice of this area restriction, the incident that was specifically cited was one in which I followed all orders expressed by law enforcement, in which I dispersed the area respectfully and in accordance with their requests. Therefore, the only thing I can infer that I was in conduct violation of was in protest itself. But I'm proud of what I've done. As many of us have spoken here, our encampment was an area of interdisciplinary, intercultural connection, the likes of which I've never had access to on this campus before or since. I hope, even though the tents are no longer behind me, we can continue these ties and these conversations here in this administration. I'm proud of what I've done, and I've been praised for what I've done by my professors, by other faculty, by the president of MSU herself. She says I have a bright future ahead of me, in direct reference to what I've done here. And yet, in public statements and emails distributed to a wide audience, we have been accused of violence. We have been accused of dispersing biohazards. That incident in question, by the way, was someone knocking over one of our porta potties. The only people that were in danger were us. I've watched my friends be brutalized. I've watched my friends be mocked and reprimanded. I've seen myself and other transgender and gender nonconforming students be deliberately and wantonly mocked by police as they arrest us. The tone of these arrests has been retaliatory, and I don't think that is in alignment with MSU Denver's calls for changemakers to operate on this campus. I'd like to point to other incidents around the country in which students' rights to peaceful protest have been affirmed as part of an intergenerational legacy that many people associated with this administration and with the administration of CU Denver and CCD themselves have been a part of. 40 people who were arrested in relation to protests at Brown University have had all of their charges dropped because the judge has affirmed that they were acting by the textbook definition of civil disobedience. And I'd like to stress that we were doing the same. Many of our tactics have drawn inspiration from the leaders of our administrations themselves. At CU Denver, a member of the Board of Trustees himself protested apartheid South Africa, calling for divestment by occupying his bursar's office. We did the same thing. If he can now enter an enshrined position of leadership in our university, I hope one day we can too. I hope, like President Davis has expressed to me privately, but not publicly, that I can have a brighter future ahead of me. I'm a good student, and I'd like to continue my education. Thank you.
Before we open it up for questions, I want to make a comment specifically to the students, because we've heard from the folks that are facing these conduct violations. We've heard from the folks who've been suspended suddenly, who no longer can access the supplies from their jobs or different parts of their lives, who have been banned from a community that they have been very attached to. And we hear you, and you're not alone. You won't be alone. You won't be alone until all of this is concluded. And I can say that for me, for all the people that I work with in the Protest Legal Defense Committee, and for the folks behind us. Because No one is going to be done with this until everyone gets to go home, until everyone is free of all of the charges and all of the consequences. And that doesn't end. It starts today. More support is coming right now. So with that, I want to see if you all have any questions. You can direct them specifically to any of the speakers.
Do you have any, are there any organizers of the protest here, like organizers? I'd like to ask a question of an organizer.
Also, Asa, can you spell your
Oh
name?
yes, I forgot that, sorry. My first name is spelled A-S-A. My last name is W-I-L-L-E-T-T.
And then, so you were a campus organizer, or is there an organizer above you, a group or anybody above you that organized you?
I wouldn't characterize it like that. Ours was a horizontal group of organizers representing all three institutions.
What's your goal to get arrested?
At times, such as the nature of civil disobedience.
So you admit that the arrests were justified?
I don't think they were justified, no.
Well, your goal was to get arrested?
Our goal was to point out the hypocrisy of students being condemned as trespassing on our own campuses. In none of these cases in which we faced repression by the police were we in these buildings even after hours. I think we're entitled to these spaces that we pay tuition for.
But you knew the codes of conduct. Did you sign a code of conduct agreement when you came to college?
I don't believe I'm in violation of the code of conduct.
Okay. So, but you had a goal of being arrested. So you knew that they might have spoken to you and said you could be arrested, or you might be arrested if you do such.
I would like to reframe this issue, because right now what we're relying on is individual students instead of the subject matter at hand, which is what we're fighting for is divestment from a genocide. And what we're taking more seriously is people being intense on a campus. That's the biggest offense, instead of children being killed, instead of 15,000 dead, instead of 15,000 kids dead, instead of 40,000 civilians dead, likely much more than we can count because of the amount of rubble that our university directly is invested in. I think I went on to reframe this because I understand where your questions are coming from. They're coming from a place that says we should be meek and fight with the guidance of what the university has said. But I want to say this for the record. We did. For 8 months, after October 7th, we knew this would happen. We've seen this over and over again in Gaza, in the West Bank, and the Golan Heights, that Palestinians are overtly punished and murdered for being civilians and for trying to live a life in a settler colonial state. I need this conversation to be reframed because it's necessary. Because what we're doing is not just something we think about in a weak will. We see this as our way of being allies to the Palestinian people and doing our small part in being against a genocide within our time. Thank you.
And again, I would like to stress, as I started out my statement, I was not arrested in the event that I received a conduct violation for. I followed all orders lawfully.
So the conduct, the codes of conduct were violated. You agreed to or not?
I think we already answered this
Yes.
question. Does anyone have
Any other questions, please?
Yes.
The codes of conduct and the laws that were perhaps violated, what were they again?
It depends on a case-by-case basis, I suppose. To speak to my own, I was not given a specific violation. I was told that for my role in a demonstration, which again, I followed all orders lawfully and dispersed at the request of law enforcement officers.
The other thing to know is that a lot of our students in these disciplinary actions are not being informed of what they're being charged with or what they're receiving discipline for. They're not allowed to receive legal counsel before because we're still scheduling that and still trying to find it. As we know, the public defense system moves slow, and especially our universities, CU Denver, MSU Denver, and CCD, are some of the poorest in the state, with some of the poorest students. That includes within our folks in SDS, as well as other students. What we need to know is that students are not being allowed to have the proper time to get legal counsel and are being punished without being informed of what their punishment is, and often not allowed to have faculty be at these disciplinary meetings. Thank you.
And I know in historic civil rights movements and other social justice movements, people have intentionally gone against laws that they saw as unjust. Would you say that that is applicable to you right now?
I would say this reminded me of a conversation I had with the head of the AHEC. Angie told us that at the time she was born as, a biracial advocate for social justice and civil rights, that at the time of her birth, miscegenation was illegal, and that her very existence is a violation of such laws. Again, as I've said, I have been praised for what I have done by leaders in all facets of this campus. So I would like to call back to the fact that we are engaging in a long tradition of the values that this very country was founded upon. So let's engage.
And to add on to that, we're inspired by the anti-apartheid movement and divestment. We're inspired by the Aurarians who were displaced from this neighborhood themselves and only started to receive recognition 34 years later. What we're asking our campus to do is to do what is right now and not to write about it 40 years later and have it become a professor's dissertation. What we can have happen now is justice within our lifetimes. We don't have to delay, we don't have to wait. Everything is a choice, and what faculty has been great. What administration has been doing has been wrong and going against the values that they so call for, of equity, of anti-racism, of supporting trans folks, of supporting disabled folks. I want to redraw that the Auraria campus police have been brutal in their response to us. The story I was speaking to earlier, I don't think I spoke to thoroughly enough. There was a student, a community member, who was forced out of her wheelchair and told repeatedly to stand up when she had no use of her legs. Not only is that ableism, but that's brutality. And that's not something I want to see happen at our campus, but we had to see. And that hurt her, and she had to go to the hospital afterwards.
And what I would like to stress there is that our administrations and AHEC as a whole is creating a series of conditions in which respect and accessibility are contingent upon one's adherence to statutory guidelines of the university. I do not think respect should be conditional. I do not think respect should be only entitled to students that are meeting the university's goals, whims, and demands. I think, much like Z said, what we are engaging in right now is demonstrable proof that people have the power to have a positive, restorative impact on our world. And our administrations are telling us that we don't.
Are there any other questions for the students or for any of the faculty who spoke?
And just like a quick sentence or two, could you explain the disciplinary action that you're facing?
I've not been given many details on it at all. I have not been told what part of the code of conduct I violated. I have not been told what potential consequences I'm facing in the long term. I have a pending conduct hearing in which there are no mechanisms I have to prepare for it besides showing up. All that I know is I am banned from every building on this campus. My prospects of taking summer classes are nil.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
So to clarify, how did you get into the hearing, if you weren't arrested? So how did you get into what happened that they got your name, that you're violating the conduct code? I'm just trying to.
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
They have not given us any information.
So they just sent you an email?
Yes. Yes.
But they didn't contact you in person?
No.
At any time with any police or anything?
I've engaged in negotiations with the administration, but no parts of any supposed conduct violations were brought up there. Only praises.
Can you touch upon, obviously the encampment's over and there's this new fence with no trespassing signs all around the Tivoli Quad. Can you talk about how the campaign is moving forward, even with the encampment not in place?
Yeah. We've made really encouraging progress. I don't necessarily, despite all of the reprisals and the retaliations that we faced, I don't want to characterize this process as us and the administration engaging in opposition together, because I think in alignment with any good series of negotiations, we are coming up with third ways of meeting all of our demands and coming up with a transformative, restorative reconciliation between all parties on campus, those who agree with us and those who don't. I'm very optimistic about the next phase that our negotiations are entering. I've received word from the Office of Student Affairs, in addition to the president, in addition to many faculty, that our conversations are only just beginning. We will continue to work towards divestment from war crimes and ethnic cleansing, and we will continue to not just tear things down, but to build something up, to sponsor and uplift the voices of students, scholars, and academics that are facing this insidious genocide, in the words of Rachel Corrie, look her up, because every university in Gaza has been destroyed. I have maintained throughout all of these negotiations that our goal is to encourage a neutrality and a diversity of thought on this campus. No one political disposition here should be leveraged over the other. And so what we want then is not just to achieve a financial cutting of ties between the very unsafe investment, the bubble that is about to burst, which is an investment in the Israeli war machine, but rather an uplifting of scholarship and voices that have long been silenced.
And I guess, does anyone on faculty want to talk about if, what your relationship to administration has been during this time, and if there has been any, retaliation toward faculty by the administration?
Hi, I can speak with respect to the MSU Denver faculty and the MSU Denver administration. The provost of MSU Denver has made very clear that faculty members will not be put through any disciplinary process for participation in a peaceful protest. We have been members of the shared governance leadership and some other groups around campus, including the president of the union, and then myself, several members of student government, the faculty trustee, lots of other people in these types of positions have been getting regular updates. The administration have been definitely trying to work with us in terms of, basically just any type of considerations or demands or concerns or things that we've had. They've listened to them. They've asked for our advice, and they haven't always followed our advice, but they've definitely listened and taken our advice very seriously. So, really up until the point where we heard that students were being put through the student conduct process, I would go so far as to say I was really proud of our administration and how different they were from a lot of administrations across the country, and treating the students, faculty, and staff with a lot of respect and grace.
And why do you, on a personal level, as faculty, feel like you want to be involved in this campaign?
Because I'm here for my students, right? The main reason why I'm a faculty member is to support students, to educate them, and to help them grow into adults, into members of the community, and into lifelong learners. And so that is my main purpose in life, and that is why I'm here right now.